The story begins with a young boy named Orun slaying horned rabbits in a dungeon, and the ease with which he slices them makes him realize that his skill with the sword has not dulled despite recent events. Just then, a group of goblins approaches him. He first uses a support magic spell on himself to become stronger and to make his sword sharper, thinking to himself that support magic is typically reserved for strengthening party members, but since he is fighting alone, he has no choice but to apply it to himself. Strengthened, he easily cuts through the goblins, but more keep coming, forcing him to remain alert while also tracking the duration of his magic. He notes that 2.5 minutes have already passed, and the effects of his spell will fade soon. But this is not a concern, because he still has ample mana due to traveling solo. So, without hesitation, he casts the enhancement again and resumes his advance. Keeping precise count of the seconds, Orun repeatedly refreshes the spell just before it expires, all while reflecting that an ordinary adventurer like himself would normally never attempt to be a jack of all trades. He recalls that he was once an enchanter, a role he only took on after being abruptly cast out of his party, and this thought pulls him into a memory from 2 nights earlier. In the flashback, Oliver, the leader of his party, approached him alongside the rest of the group and calmly announced his decision. Orun had assumed it was a tasteless joke, unable to accept that his closest childhood friend could be serious about something like this. Oliver, however, explained that their long history was the very reason he had tolerated Orun's shortcomings for so many years, but his patience had finally run out. Annery and Derek supported Oliver without hesitation, stating bluntly that Orun contributed nothing but delays and weaknesses to the team. The words hit Orun hard as memories surfaced of the day, 8 years earlier, when he and Oliver had formed the party together, building it from nothing and raising it to S rank within only a few years. They had even earned the title of the Heroes Party after becoming the only group to clear the 94th floor of the Great Dungeon of the South. And now, standing there, Orun felt as though he was losing family rather than comrades. Desperate, he begged for another chance and demanded to know what had caused Oliver's sudden change of heart. Oliver explained that during their joint raid weeks earlier, he had seen just how powerful the enchanters of other S-ranked parties truly were, and witnessing that gap made it painfully clear how weak Orun was by comparison, leading the group to decide they no longer wanted him. Orun argued that he was primarily a swordsman, not a dedicated enchanter, and that expecting him to match specialists was unreasonable, especially considering that he had achieved remarkable accomplishments, such as developing his own original magic. Derek dismissed this entirely, claiming Orun had only abandoned the sword because Oliver surpassed him in that role. Orun denied this, insisting he changed roles solely because he possessed the greatest aptitude for it, and reminded them that his custom-made spells were the reason they had survived on the deepest dungeon floors. Oliver, however, showed no interest in hearing any of it, making it clear that the decision had already been made. Oliver revealed that he had already chosen a replacement enchanter and offered a quiet apology for the betrayal, leaving Orun with no room to argue as the decision had already been finalized. With nothing left to say, Orun accepted the outcome and turned away, intending to leave in silence, but Annery stopped him, unable to contain her frustration. She poured out her resentment by calling him a jack of all trades and a clown who foolishly believed he could handle everything on his own, but Orun did not respond, and chose to walk away instead. Back in the present, Orun acknowledges to himself that Annery's insult was not entirely wrong, since he is currently acting as both an enchanter and a swordsman, yet rather than rejecting that truth, he resolves to master both paths so thoroughly that no one will ever look down on him again. After clearing the floor, he heads toward the teleportation crystal to leave, only to notice a group of adventurers rushing toward it in visible panic, muttering among themselves about how they abandoned a girl while fighting orcs. The leader attempts to justify the decision, insisting that sacrificing her was unavoidable since she had only joined their party that very day, and hearing this excuse immediately strikes a nerve with Orun, who sees his own abandonment reflected in her situation. He confronts the group, berating them for making excuses after leaving someone to die, and forces them to tell him the location. Orun then immediately rushes to save her. The girl is an enchanter who has trapped herself inside a fragile barrier to keep the orcs attacking her at bay, though her limited magical strength makes it clear she cannot hold them off much longer. She cries out for help, desperately begging anyone to save her. Orun arrives just in time. He immediately uses a wind spell to push the monsters back before strengthening himself with support magic to fight them alone. His skills shock the girl, who cannot tell if he is a swordsman or an enchanter as he keeps cutting the orcs with precision. She falls to her knees crying in relief after he defeats them all. Orun escorts her safely out of the dungeon and prepares to depart, but she stops him and asks for his name, introducing herself first as Sophia Claudel, which immediately catches his attention due to her family name. Orun introduces himself in return and turns to leave again, but Sophia urgently begs him to let her thank him properly by treating him to dinner, and although he refuses at first, her persistent pleading eventually wears him down. She brings him to a shop marked with a rabbit crest, and Orun recalls seeing the same symbol on her cape earlier, making him certain that Sophia belongs to one of the largest guilds, the Night Sky Silver Rabbits. Inside the establishment, Sophia unexpectedly encounters her older sister Selma, who is there for a business meeting, and the sight of Sophia arriving with a man immediately causes Selma to assume her younger sister is secretly dating. Selma scolds Sophia, declaring that she is far too young to have a boyfriend, prompting Sophia to hastily deny any romantic involvement, after which Selma takes a closer look at Orun and recognizes him. Orun recognizes her as well, knowing that Selma is the leader of the strongest S-ranked party in the guild, and widely regarded as the most powerful enchanter on the continent, as well as the one who pioneered the concept of assigning highly specialized roles within a party, a strategy that reshaped the entire adventuring meta. Orun cannot help but place some blame on her for his own situation, since if she had never introduced that system, he would never have been forced to abandon his role as a swordsman and become an enchanter in the first place. Orun recalls meeting her during the joint raid weeks ago, which also reminds him of Oliver kicking him out, but he pushes that thought aside. He notices Selma's strange expressions and asks whether she is angry with him. Selma immediately calls him out and accuses him of trying to pursue her younger sister. Orun quickly realizes the misunderstanding and explains that he is only there to share a meal with Sophia and has no romantic interest in her at all. However, instead of clearing things up, his blunt honesty irritates Selma further, as she takes it as an indirect insult towards Sophia. But before the situation can escalate, Sophia steps in and explains that Orun saved her life. Hearing this, Selma immediately understands that Sophia entered the dungeon alone despite being told not to, since her original plan had been to take Sophia there herself in 2 days, and the fact that Sophia could not wait even that long leaves her visibly upset. Still, because Sophia is unharmed, Selma forgives her after making her promise never to act so recklessly again. Then, she turns to Orun to thank him for saving her sister, while also apologizing for her earlier hostility. The tension fades and the three of them sit down to eat together, during which Selma recalls the joint raid where she and Orun first met. That time, both Selma and Orun served as enchanters and were stationed together. In present, Selma openly acknowledges how much his support magic contributed to the success of the raid. Sophia listens in surprise, unable to understand how her sister knows Orun when she has never heard of him, and she curiously asks whether he is someone famous. Selma responds by explaining that Orun is a member of the hero's party. Orun admits that he was dismissed only a few days earlier and is now a free agent. Seizing the opportunity, Selma invites him to join her guild on a training expedition scheduled for the next day. She explains that the mission will have A-rank adventurers guiding new recruits through 50 floors of the dungeon. Normally, this journey would take many months to complete. However, she says she knows a special shortcut, and there is also pressure from the guild's sponsors to finish it quickly. Orun deduces that the true purpose of the expedition seems to let novices gain easy experience by having veterans defeat the periodic floor bosses for them, an insight that visibly impresses Selma. She confirms that he is right and explains that floor bosses appear every 10 levels, posing an insurmountable obstacle for beginners. But if experienced adventurers defeat those bosses for them, the recruits can advance smoothly. Since she considers Orun a seasoned, top-ranked adventurer, she insists he is uniquely qualified to help and offers generous compensation for his assistance. Although her request genuinely pleases him, Orun cannot understand why she values him so highly when his own teammates discarded him as a burden with weak magic, and because he no longer wishes to be an enchanter, he hesitantly refuses. Sophia then looks at him with pleading eyes and begs him to reconsider, insisting that she truly needs him there, which softens his resolve enough for him to compromise by saying he will think it over without making any promises. He also makes it clear that he now considers himself a swordsman, and that if he joins the expedition, it will be strictly in that role. Selma is surprised by this revelation, unaware that Orhun was originally a swordsman, but she accepts his condition, assuming that if things take a turn for the worse, he will naturally revert to being an enchanter. She tells him to come to the Silver Rabbits Guild headquarters if he decides to participate, and with that, Orhun takes his leave. He heads next to an old man's shop, where he is served tea and casually asked how his day has gone, and the old man thanks him for advertising the store, noting that business has been thriving ever since. Orhun apologizes, explaining that he can no longer promote the shop because he is no longer part of the hero's party, which leads the old man to immediately sense the loss of confidence weighing on him. Speaking gently, he tells Orhun that a title does not define who he is and that he should begin living for himself while continuing to help others as he always has. And moved by those words, Orhun thanks the old man for his advice. Early the next morning, Orhun arrives at the Silver Rabbits Guild and finds Selma waiting at the front gate as if she has been expecting him, prompting him to thank her for waiting. She expresses her happiness that he chose to join them and remarks that he looks far more alive than he did the day before, to which Orhun responds that leaving the hero's party has lifted a weight from him, and that he is genuinely looking forward to seeing where this new path will lead. Once they are inside, Vince, the head of the Silver Rabbits, welcomes Orhun and acknowledges having already heard of him. Orhun asks to hear the details of the teaching expedition, and Selma explains that they will advance from the first floor of the Great Dungeon to the 51st floor in 3 days, stopping at floor 21 on the first day, floor 36 on the second, and pushing onward from there. A flashback from earlier shows Selma informing Vince of Orhun's dismissal from the hero's party, with Vince commenting that his loss severely weakens the so-called heroes. Selma agrees, stating that Orhun's support magic elevated the party far beyond its natural limits. Although his spells lack raw power, his casting speed is extraordinary, at least 4 times faster than hers. She adds that he uses original spells, excels at battlefield analysis, anticipates enemy actions, and applies support with perfect timing, all hallmarks of a truly skilled enchanter. Without him, the hero's party will significantly weaken, increasing the Silver Rabbits' chances of reclaiming the top rank. Back in the present, Orhun is briefed that the expedition consists of 10 rookie parties and 5 escort units, including Orhun and Selma. The rookies will rotate handling normal monsters, while the escorts intervene only in unusual situations. Orhun questions why there are only 5 escorts, arguing that such an aggressive schedule would normally warrant more A-rank support. Selma hesitates, then explains that the pressure is intentional to accelerate the rookies' growth. Orhun senses this is not the full truth and realizes the expedition's success is more important than they admit, but accepts that he is not meant to know everything and agrees to help. Vince offers him 2 gold coins up front and 10 more upon completion, an amount equal to a year's living expenses. Orhun hesitates, but Selma bluntly states that this reflects how highly they value him, ending the discussion. Though surprised, Orhun feels encouraged by their trust and resolves to give his full effort. The next day, the guild gathers at the Great Dungeon entrance. Selma and Sophia greet Orhun, and he notices Sophia wearing a different outfit. Assuming it is a rookie uniform, he casually compliments her, leaving her flustered and delighted, while Selma reacts in quiet horror at her sister's visible happiness. Selma defensively accuses Orhun of being too skilled at flattering women and asks if he has a girlfriend. He denies it, explaining that living with multiple women in the hero's party made him comfortable speaking naturally. Selma somewhat accepts this explanation. Sophia asks where Orhun is staying, and he replies that he is currently at an inn but needs a permanent place. Selma sharply questions Sophia's intentions, causing her to panic and deny any interest, claiming she was only curious. Selma calms down and asks why Orhun is standing apart from the group. He explains that, as an outsider, he does not want to make the rookies nervous. Selma says the rookies already look tense and his presence may actually help. She asks Orhun to follow her and sends Sophia back to her party. She then introduces him to the other 3 escorts, assuring them he is reliable. Orhun grows uneasy and asks her not to raise expectations too high, but she dismisses his concern with a smile. Orun introduces himself as a frontline attacker, followed by the others, Anthem, a defender, Bernard, also a defender, and Kathy, a healer. Orun observes that the escort team now has a perfect balance of attackers, defenders, a healer, and an enchanter, and wonders if he had not participated, someone would have been forced to take on multiple roles. This thought deepens his unease, reinforcing his sense that something about the expedition is not quite right. Selma notices the doubt on his face and, for a moment, recalls her earlier conversation with Vince. He had acknowledged how painful it was to lose such a powerful ace, but reminded her that Orun was meant to serve as an enchanter like herself. For the sake of party balance, he could not be placed in the first group, a fact she had already understood. She cannot help feeling that nothing has changed since last year, that they are still stuck and unable to reclaim what they lost. That is why she turned to Orun in the first place, yet he chose to fight as a swordsman instead. If he cannot function properly as a frontline attacker, then everything may fall apart from what she had planned. Orun notices the concern on her face, but she quickly regains her composure and announces that they face 3 grueling days ahead and leads him to meet the rookies. Addressing the assembled recruits, Selma declares the start of their descent to the 51st floor of the Great Dungeon. Noting the stiff expressions of rookies, she asks if they are afraid of reaching the middle floor so soon. Without waiting for a response, she reassures them that they have nothing to fear, explaining that she has brought an exceptionally powerful helper, in case anything goes wrong. She introduces Orun by name and states that he has reached the 94th floor, a depth even they have not conquered. The revelation shocks Orun and sends whispers of awe through the rookies. Selma adds that anyone aiming to explore the dungeon should already know who he is, since he was a member of the hero's party, and understands the Great Dungeon better than any of them. The rookies are instantly energized, while Orun pales at the sudden attention, having never expected his past to be revealed so openly. Selma, however, feels no regret, knowing her words have successfully motivated the rookies. She orders everyone to remain on standby and moves off to conduct final checks with the other escorts. Orun tells her that she may have exaggerated during her speech. Selma brushes this off, pointing out that he truly did reach the 94th floor, and explains that part of their role is helping the rookies steady themselves and focus on what lies ahead. Orun cannot argue, though he feels uneasy, remembering that he only accepted the hero title to help the old man's shop, and hoping this attention will not cause trouble later. Selma then assigns Orun to escort Group 10, calling them her most promising rookies and explaining that, if they learn to function properly as a party, they should have no trouble reaching the middle floors. Orun accepts, though he privately questions whether it is wise to entrust the most promising rookies to an outsider like himself. Upon meeting Group 10, Orun immediately notices that Sophia is among them, but the party has only 3 members. Assuming someone is late, he asks about it, only to learn that this is the full group. 3-person rookie parties are rare due to the increased risk, and one of the boys explains confidently that they operate as a trio because no one else can keep up with them. The confidence surprises Orun and signals how highly the clan values them, though he worries that such self-assurance at their age could lead to problems. Orun asks them to introduce themselves. The boy steps forward first and introduces himself as Logan, the leader and an enchanter. He boldly claims that he will one day surpass Selma. Orun silently acknowledges his audacity and lets the next member speak. The girl introduces herself as Caroline, a defender. Noticing she lacks armor, Orun asks whether she plans to equip it inside the dungeon. Disappointed, Caroline explains that she is a defender who uses neither armor nor shield. Orun assumes she relies on dodging rather than blocking, which she confirms. Orun warns her that a dodge-based defender requires extensive combat experience, but Logan interrupts, saying the clan already tried to warn her, and she ignored them. Caroline fires back that Logan also ignores his instructors, which Logan dismisses by claiming he does not need to listen because he is that good. Sophia attempts to stop their argument, but Orun already recognizes Logan and Caroline as troublemakers. Even so, Sophia introduces herself as a rear attacker and caster, and Orun finds that her presence calms him more than he expected. The expedition begins and they enter the dungeon. Caroline asks why a former member of the hero's party is taking part and wonders if this means the Silver Rabbits no longer see the heroes as rivals. Orun asks if she listened to Selma's speech and reminds her that he is only a former member. Caroline presses further, calling his departure from such a celebrated party a waste. Though her curiosity is not malicious, Orun grows weary and firmly tells her that it is none of her business. She drops the topic and instead asks whether he and Sophia know each other. Orun confirms it, and Caroline mentions that Sophia said someone incredible would be accompanying them. Nervous, Sophia admits that Orun is the person she meant, explaining that he saved her life, that he is strong, and that her sister assured her there was nothing to worry about if he was present. Soon, monsters begin to appear, but Orun's trap spells activate flawlessly, eliminating threats without slowing the group. Because the traps are hard to detect before triggering, the party avoids unnecessary fights, including enemies approaching from behind. Orun continues placing traps to conserve both time and stamina, and by the time they reach the 20th floor, he has closely observed the rookies and concludes that they should be able to complete the teaching expedition without serious difficulty. Also, his assessment of Logan improves, as despite his arrogance, his skill as an enchanter is genuine, and he could perform well in an A-rank party if he maintains it. However, his poor leadership and unclear instructions are serious weaknesses, though Orun believes experience will fix them. Caroline has the expected speed of a dodge-type defender, but Orun sees two problems. She charges enemies too recklessly and relies on dual daggers that may lack enough power for such a small party. Sophia stands out less than the others, but already exceeds average rookie level. Though cautious, she has no major flaws and shows strong future potential. After the other escort groups defeat the 20th floor boss, the expedition proceeds to the 21st floor as planned. Selma has everyone register their progress on their guild cards and ends the day. Outside the dungeon, she asks Orun if he enjoyed escorting, and he answers honestly that Group 10 has great potential, but is not yet cohesive, adding that Caroline in particular concerns him. Selma laughs awkwardly and remarks that Caroline has improved greatly, which only makes Orun wonder how bad she was before, and they part for the night. The next morning at the inn, Orun opens the newspaper and freezes upon seeing Oliver featured on the front page, alongside news that the hero's party has already recruited a new enchanter, making his removal public. He slams the paper down, bitterly muttering that they do not understand how deeply this hurts, and wishing they had at least waited until the teaching expedition ended. Thinking of the rookies, he realizes with dread that their perception of him could change if they read it. Unable to undo it, he leaves the inn early for the meeting point. While walking through the city, a familiar voice calls his name. He turns to see Luna, his ex-colleague from the hero's party. She approaches and greets him, saying it has been a long time. He recalls that even as others grew distant, Luna always treated him the same. She had been away on an errand when he was expelled, and Orun knows that if she had been present that day, events might have unfolded differently. He asks her what she wants, and Luna unexpectedly asks him to return to the hero's party, saying they need his strength. Though surprised, Orun admits he expected this from her, knowing how highly she regards him. He responds that he does not believe the rest of the party feels the same way, especially after the newspaper article. Luna admits she has not seen it and says she is asking on her own initiative, promising to persuade the others if he comes back. Her sincerity makes it clear she truly intends to bring him back, but Orun knows it is no longer possible. He tells her that after what has been published in the article, returning is no longer an option, nor something he wants. Luna apologizes softly, unaware of what had been written, yet still takes his hands and reminds him of the promise they made to clear the great dungeon together. The words cut deeply, and Orun sharply pulls away, saying the promise was made with Oliver, and since Oliver cast him out, it can never be fulfilled. Luna falls silent, unable to reply. Orun apologizes and walks away without looking back, leaving her standing alone. Deep down, he wishes the three of them could have remained as they once were, and that their childhood promise could still be kept. But he knows with certainty that there is no path back to that past. Orun walks toward the dungeon entrance, uneasy about how the children will view him after the article claims he was expelled from the hero's party for being too weak. By the time he reaches the meeting point, he hears the students murmuring about it, questioning why he never told them the truth. But before any of them confront him, Selma arrives. Selma apologizes to Orun for repeatedly introducing him to the rookies as a member of the hero's party the previous day. Orun tells her there is no need to apologize, admitting that he bears some responsibility for being vague about what happened. Regardless of how the article frames it, he did reach the 94th floor and performed well the day before, so there is no reason for a single article to cast doubt on his abilities. Caroline and Sophia continue to trust Orun completely, but Logan is no longer convinced and directly asks whether the article is true. Orun confirms that it is mostly accurate, explaining that he was removed from the hero's party for being considered too weak, though weakness is relative, and assures them that he is still more than capable of guiding them safely to the 51st floor. While the others accept this, Logan remains convinced that Orun is unreliable. They enter the dungeon with the goal of reaching the 35th floor by the end of the day. As their supervisor, Orun is not allowed to actively assist until they reach the 31st floor, so he observes closely and stays ready to intervene. Thanks to their talent, the group clears the lower floors without serious trouble, and once they reach the 31st floor, Orun assumes command and takes the vanguard position. He suddenly orders everyone to stop after sensing monsters ahead, and the group quickly forms up for battle against goblins. Orun instructs Caroline to attack first, and she charges in immediately, pushing herself too far and risking being overwhelmed. Orun is about to tell Logan to cast support spells, but Logan has already started casting on his own, deciding that Orun's instructions are unnecessary. In his mind, if Orun is no longer a hero, then anyone could do what he does. Orun immediately understands what Logan is thinking, but it does not concern him, and he shifts his attention to Sophia, who is facing an orc and frozen in place due to lingering trauma from nearly dying in the dungeon before. Orun deliberately refrains from intervening, while Logan judges him as an incompetent instructor for not rushing to her aid and prepares to step in himself. Just then, Logan notices Orun discreetly casting an agility debuff on the orc, slowing it just enough to buy Sophia time to regain her composure. Orun reminds Sophia calmly that she is strong enough to handle the situation, and that she is not alone, as Caroline, Logan, and he himself are all ready to support her if anything goes wrong. Reassured, Sophia gathers her courage and casts an advanced fire javelin, completely destroying the orc. Orun is caught off guard, having been unaware that she could use advanced magic, while Caroline openly praises her, impressed by the display. Orun congratulates Sophia, but Logan remains shaken, realizing how precise Orun's intervention was, especially his ability to instantly and covertly apply a debuff. The decision to expel someone with such control and skill no longer makes sense to him, leaving him uncertain about what to believe. The group eventually reaches the 35th floor, where they encounter a giant tarantula. Logan panics, knowing none of them can defeat it alone, and is about to suggest retreat when Orun orders him to cast agility, magic, and durability buffs on the others so they can engage. Logan thinks the idea is reckless, but Caroline has already rushed forward to confront the monster. When Logan tries to follow, Orun stops him, warning that a supporter would be at a disadvantage on the front line. Orun directs Caroline to leap over the spider and attack its back, and she lands several solid strikes, drawing its full attention. He tells her to maintain its focus while avoiding contact with its venom, relying on her agility to stay ahead of it, then instructs Logan to keep the buffs active while Sophia prepares her attack spell. Once Sophia finishes casting, she releases several air slashes that sever 4 of the spider's legs and slam it into the ground, though the fight is not over yet. Orun immediately tells Logan to apply strength and agility buffs to Caroline, a command that only makes sense moments later when the spider fires its thread and begins dragging Caroline toward its fangs. Orun had ordered the buffs in advance so she could break free on her own, but even with the enhancement, her strength falls just short, forcing him to quietly add a sharpness enchantment to her dagger. The added cutting power allows Caroline to sever the thread and escape, after which Orun orders Sophia to finish the monster with a rock bullet, finally bringing the battle to an end. Orun congratulates everyone on their performance, and the group returns to the surface, knowing that the next day will be the final push toward the 51st floor. Selma instructs everyone to rest well, and as Orun prepares to leave, 2 other supervisors approach him, not to confront him, but to invite him to dinner. Having had little chance to speak with them during the expedition, Orun accepts, and they head to a tavern together. At the same time, Sophia, Caroline, and Logan ride home in a carriage, where Logan remains quiet, replaying everything he witnessed. Remembering Sophia once said Orun saved her from a group of orcs, he asks what she remembers of that fight. Sophia admits she was not fully aware at the time, but recalls a powerful gust of wind when Orun arrived, followed by an enchantment on his sword before he cut the orcs down. Logan concludes it must have been a sharpness enchantment, noting how difficult such spells are since they are applied to weapons rather than people, and finds it strange that someone so skilled in magic fights with a sword at all. Sophia says she does not understand it either, though she remembers hearing that Orun recently shifted into an attacker role. Logan reflects on how disappointed and angry he felt after learning Orun had been expelled from the hero's party, believing he had failed to live up to expectations, only to realize he was wrong. Orun not only functioned as an exceptional supporter, but also used an agility debuff on an orc, a technique far more difficult than standard buffs, and something even Selma rarely attempts. Logan reflects that Orun not only analyzes the battlefield flawlessly and issues orders at the exact moments they are needed, but also predicts the tarantula's final attack in advance, making him far superior to any enchanter Logan has ever seen, and leaving no clear reason for him to abandon that role for swordsmanship. When Caroline asks whether Orun is at least strong with a sword, Sophia confirms it, pointing out that he would not have been able to defeat the orcs who attacked her otherwise. From this, Logan concludes that Orun must be a rare genius, skilled in both magic and swordplay. And while he knows he can never surpass him outright, he resolves to learn as much as possible from Orun and grow strong enough to one day stand beside him. At the same time, Orun eats dinner at a tavern with the other supervisors, all of them impressed by the food. And when they ask what he used to do for fun in the hero's party, he explains that he rarely had time for anything beyond errands and busy work. Hearing this only makes the article branding him useless seem more cruel, as it becomes clear he was the backbone of the party, and their open support moves Orun enough that he thanks them sincerely. Still curious, they ask why he switched from being an enchanter, which Selma herself praised highly, to becoming a frontline attacker. And Orun answers that, after leaving the hero's party, he chose the path he always wanted, explaining that he originally joined as a swordsman and dreamed of becoming the greatest in the world, an ambition inspired by watching his grandfather fight with a blade. When asked why he ever became an enchanter if it was not his wish, Orun recalls the early days of the hero's party, when advancing deeper into the dungeon made their enemies too strong for their existing composition. And with Selma's influence spreading at the time, the party decided they needed an enchanter. Because Orun could learn almost anything, the role fell to him, and while that sacrifice allowed them to reach the 94th floor, he insists it was not truly a success, as they advanced too quickly instead of building strength gradually, and were never prepared for what awaited them there. He states with certainty that the hero's party has no chance of clearing the 94th floor as they are now, and that attempting it would be reckless. Sensing his tension, the others steer the conversation elsewhere and ask what kind of swordsman he aims to become. And Orun answers that he wants to be a jack-of-all-trades swordsman, capable of surviving even the deepest floors alone, a dream that amazes them, though they believe it suits him. The next day, the hero's party heads straight into the dungeon, and despite Orun's warning, they appear ready to attempt exactly what he said would be foolish. The next morning, Orun returns to the dungeon entrance for the final stretch of the expedition and is immediately greeted by the children. Caroline decides to give Sophia a chance to speak with him, so she casually mentions that it would be nice if they received a reward after completing the expedition, then nudges Sophia to remind her about wanting to officially invite Orun to join their guild. But before Sophia can say anything, Selma suddenly calls Orun over. And as Orun walks towards Selma, he overhears several students discussing how the hero party plans to reach the deepest part of the dungeon that day, starting from floor 92. The news makes him stop. He cannot believe they would attempt something so dangerous, especially after replacing him with a new member only days ago and without any time to practice together. Anxiety sets in as he imagines how badly it could go, but he quickly reminds himself that it is no longer his responsibility. Meanwhile, the hero party arrives on the 92nd floor of the southern dungeon with their new recruit, Philly. 2 days earlier, she had been introduced to the group, and her CV says that she once reached the 100th floor of the western dungeon. Based on that alone, they assume she will easily help them do the same here. Annalie and Derek are especially confident, convinced that Philly's support magic will far surpass anything Orun ever provided. Both are particularly bitter about how Orun never allowed extravagant parties, despite the party's substantial funds. Hearing this, Philly grows uneasy, sensing that without Orun managing their finances, the two would have squandered everything. Oliver steps in and tells them to stop talking about Orun, reminding everyone that the day is meant to welcome Philly into the party. At that moment, Luna storms in after learning that Orun has joined the Silver Rabbits expedition. She is stunned to discover that the party has already replaced him without consulting her beforehand. She demands to know why Orun is now with another guild. Annalie and Derek are equally shocked that Orun managed to join such a high-profile group in only a few days, but they insist it changes nothing. He is no longer part of their team. Initially, Luna assumes Orun left because he felt burdened by the party. Derek corrects her, proudly stating that they were the ones who kicked him out. Luna is left speechless. She reminds them that Orun was the core of the party, and that they never would have progressed this far without him. The others refuse to accept this. Derek dismisses Orhun as a permanently inferior enchanter, and insists there is no point in complaining now that he is gone. Luna dislikes it, but she knows she cannot convince Orhun to return. She clenches her teeth and accepts the loss. The others interpret her silence as agreement. Emboldened, Oliver announces that he wants to test Philly's synergy with the party on floor 92 and, if successful, push onward to floor 94 to break their record. Luna immediately objects, pointing out that testing a new member on such a dangerous floor is reckless. She suggests using a safer floor, such as floor 30. Annalie and Derek admit it was close, but they insist Orun was the reason they struggled. With someone like Philly, they believe there will be no problems. Luna remains opposed, reminding them that a black dragon inhabits that floor. She has no desire to be incinerated. Oliver ignores her objections and makes it clear that the decision is final. Luna considers leaving but chooses to stay, unwilling to abandon the party yet, and her fears proved correct almost immediately. The party encounters a giant mammoth, an enemy they would normally defeat without effort. But this time, when Oliver strikes, his blade does no damage at all. Derek can barely block the mammoth's attacks, and Annalie's fire magic is little more than sparks. They quickly realize something is wrong. Their attacks are weaker despite having Philly's buffs. Philly struggles to maintain her enchantments, and her full concentration prevents her from analyzing the battlefield or giving instructions. The others are forced to make decisions themselves, a task they consistently fail at. Oliver finally realizes that the party is far weaker than he believed, though he does not understand why. Luna watches from the side, preparing to explain what went wrong when a terrifying roar echoes through the floor. The black dragon appears, crushing the mammoth instantly and knocking the party to the ground. Luna shouts for everyone to flee. Annalie and Derek believe they can still win. Oliver shares their misplaced confidence, assuming that because they defeated the dragon once before, they can do it again. Derek charges forward to block a fireball and is immediately blasted to the ground. Luna rushes to heal him, while Philly stands frozen in terror. Annalie, filled with regret, launches a fire javelin that leaves the dragon completely unfazed, drawing its attention and resulting in her being blasted back. Oliver panics as everything collapses around him. Luna shouts for him to focus and escape while they still can. He agrees, but the dragon begins charging another attack, and both Annalie and Derek are unconscious. Luna asks Oliver to buy her time while she heals them. Oliver orders Philly to snap out of it and cast every buff she can on him. She complies, and Oliver unleashes his ultimate attack, but his strike collides with the dragon's fireball and is completely negated, sending him flying. Despair overtakes him. Seeing no other option, Luna tells him to use the Fickle Gate, an emergency item that forcibly connects 2 dungeon floors at random, always leading to a boss room. Philly protests, pointing out the danger, but staying means certain death. Oliver activates the gate and lifts Annalie and Derek, but just as they prepare to escape, the dragon blocks their path with fire and charges forward, but passes through the gate instead. The party survives, but Luna immediately realizes the severity of what just happened. The dragon has been teleported to another random boss floor, putting countless adventurers at risk. Luna insists they return to the guild immediately and trigger an emergency force teleport for all adventurers. Although Oliver worries about the penalties they will face, he agrees that preventing casualties matters more. Luna heals Annalie and Derek and explains that after the evacuation, they will have to fight the dragon again. And when they do, Orun must replace Philly. She finally explains why the party feels weaker. Their strength has not declined. They simply relied too heavily on Orun. The power of support magic depends on the caster, while how long it lasts depends on the recipient's magic resistance. And because Oliver's resistance is extremely high, Philly's spells wore off quickly, something Orun always accounted for. Oliver argues that Philly has more talent, but Luna explains that Orun compensated for his lack of talent by creating original magic spells, a feat so rare it shocks everyone. She says Orun's base enchantments were weaker than average, but his original spell amplified their effectiveness 50-fold. Oliver always relied on those buffs to reduce how much energy his attacks required, and Annalie did the same. Even their equipment was enhanced by his spells. Without realizing it, the entire party was dependent on Orun. They all come to understand the truth, except Oliver. His ego takes over, and he convinces himself that Orun had nothing to do with their past success. It is the final day of the expedition, and the team plans to travel from floor 36 to floor 50 and then teleport out safely. Although the mission should be manageable with supervisors present, Orun feels an unshakable sense of dread about the dungeon. He can't identify the reason and eventually pushes the feeling aside when the recruits call out to him excitedly. Caroline asks Orun how to improve her combat skills because she wants to kill as many monsters as possible. Orun reminds her that as a defender, her role is to protect the party, not charge ahead, but she complains that it's boring. Logan supports Orun's advice, saying even Albert Sensible used to say the same thing. The mention of Albert catches Orun's attention. Albert, the famed ace of the Silver Rabbit Guild, died last year fighting the Black Dragon on floor 92. Caroline knows the story and explains that Albert died protecting a teammate even though that wasn't his role. She's determined not to let something like that happen to her own team, which is why she rushes ahead. Orun notices her unresolved trauma, but chooses not to address it. Sophia and Logan also ask Orun for advice on how they can improve. Later, once they enter the dungeon and take a break, Selma comments on how much the kids have warmed up to Orun, and he admits he worried about how they'd treat him after the newspaper article. Selma brings up Albert's death and how devastating it was for the Silver Rabbits. She explains that Orun and the heroes later defeated the Black Dragon, proving that Albert didn't die because he was weak, but because he was unlucky. Selma adds that the guild still hasn't been able to fill the gap Albert left, and subtly tries to recruit Orun. Orun declines, saying one party doesn't need 2 enchanters, though Selma argues he'd still be valuable since he's switching to swordsmanship. The mission begins, and the teams are briefed. Orun's group is assigned to Group 10, the rear of the formation, which actually reflects their promise. Sophia is nervous about being so far back, but Orun explains they need experience navigating the dungeon alone in case they get separated. Logan agrees, while Caroline worries about getting lost. Orun stresses the importance of gathering information beforehand, especially dungeon maps. Caroline asks him to share what he knows about deeper floors. Orun explains that the lower floors start around floor 76, and are usually ice or snow themed, and the deepest floors begin at floor 91, but he's constantly interrupted before he can say more. On the surface, Luna arrives at the Adventurers Guild with the hero party and urgently asks to see the guildmaster. The receptionist, Philly, tells her the guildmaster is in a meeting, but Luna insists there's no time and demands that everyone be force teleported out of the dungeon immediately. Back in the dungeon, the group senses something is wrong. They haven't encountered any monsters in a large area where there should be many. Logan asks Orun if this is normal on floor 40, but Orun has never seen anything like it and suspects the monsters are afraid of something unknown. Caroline grows impatient and charges a lone goblin. Orun warns her that it's strong enough to kill her in one hit, but she ignores him. He intervenes and debuffs the goblin so she can defeat it. Caroline proudly claims the kill, but the others scold her for being dangerously reckless. Caroline realizes her mistake and apologizes for putting the team in danger. Orun accepts her apology on the condition that she's more careful and offers to teach her active defense later. He explains that it involves drawing enemy attacks to keep them occupied while the party prepares a counterattack. Although Caroline finds this exciting, Orun reminds her that her role isn't to defeat enemies, but to stall them for her teammates. On the surface, the guildmaster meets the hero party and hesitates to force teleport everyone out of the dungeon because of the huge mana cost. Luna insists it's an emergency, explaining that the Black Dragon escaped through her fickle gate and is now on a random dungeon floor. If nothing is done, someone is bound to run into it. Back in the dungeon, Logan asks Orun to teach him debuff magic, but Orun explains it's too difficult and unreliable to use as a main skill, especially on deeper floors. Instead, Orun shows him how to set traps to control the battlefield and stop enemies from ambushing the party. That is an important job for an enchanter. Orun also advises Sophia to learn parallel casting to get stronger. Since her powerful spells take time to activate, starting a second spell while the first is still charging will make her much more effective in battle. He suggests she train after the mission and says Selma could teach her later. Sophia admits she'd rather learn directly from Orun, and he agrees, even though he's a bit reluctant. On the surface, the guild finishes preparing the forced teleport and orders the hero party to return to the dungeon to fight the Black Dragon. The party is clearly scared, and Anelli tries to delay by saying they need time to recover, but Luna cuts her off and insists they go back immediately. Back in the dungeon, Orun leads the supervisors to defeat a dangerous troll boss while keeping the recruits out of harm's way. The hero party heads back into the dungeon with Luna leading. Others question why adventurers on floors 40-50 were evacuated first. Luna explains it's because Orun is likely there, and they'll need his help to have any chance of defeating the Black Dragon. Meanwhile, Orun and his group reach the boss room on floor 50 and defeat the crab monster. officially finishing their mission, but just as they start to relax, the space above them suddenly cracks open, and the black dragon appears out of nowhere, leaving everyone frozen in terror. Orun screams at everyone to run, but he is the only one who is holding up. Even the other A-rank guides are frozen in place, crushed by the immense pressure bearing down on them. Among them, Selma is the only one who can still think, even if only faintly, but she is unable to move. She realizes she must take command right now to ensure the rookies escape this monstrosity. The dragon's immense aura has made the air heavy, as if it is draining the oxygen from the cave. Selma remembers the horror stories she once heard about the black dragon, the monster that preys upon adventurers and slaughters them beyond recognition. Orun realizes that if they stay like this, no one will survive. He thinks about leading everyone to the teleportation stone so they can escape, but seeing that everyone is shaking with fear, he decides there is only one option left. He must face the dragon to buy the others time to escape. With that resolve, he grips his sword and draws it, and his sudden movement snaps the other guides out of their trance. Selma regains her senses as well. She immediately takes command, ordering the others into defensive positions to shield the rookies. The A-rank adventurers move at once. The mage raises a magic barrier to absorb the dragon's attack, but Selma realizes the spell is nowhere near strong enough to stop the incoming blast. Orun, on the other hand, fearlessly charges at the dragon, immediately casting a protective spell of his own to reinforce the guides. This proves to be just enough to save them from certain death, though they are left thoroughly shaken, fully aware that without Orun, they would already be nothing but ashes. Orun weaves past the dragon's attacks, while tactically retreating, never giving the monster a clear opening to gather power for a full charge. In one swift motion, he draws a small dagger and hurls it toward the beast's eye. The dragon instantly shuts its eye to protect itself from being blinded. This is exactly what Orun anticipated. He uses that split second to leap toward the dragon, aiming to behead it with a single decisive swing of his sword. The slash releases an immense shockwave, blasting dust and smoke throughout the cave. For a moment, the guides believe the beast has been defeated. Orun knows better and keeps his guard raised, and as the dust slowly settles, the dragon rises once more with a furious roar, completely unharmed. Orun signals the guides to surround the rookies and shield them from every side, ensuring none of them is harmed at any cost, while he draws the dragon's attention. Selma hesitates, but Orun urges the rookies to hold on and then rushes forward once more. The dragon gathers its flames and unleashes a barrage of fiery breath. Orun slips through the inferno, narrowly avoiding each blast. He circles the monster, keeping its focus locked on him and away from the others. Selma and the others are stunned by Orun's skill and bravery. Selma questions whether it is right to let him fight such a deadly beast by himself. She realizes how deeply she cares about Orun now, and the thought of losing him tightens her chest. Orun is fully focused. He slips past one attack after another, and even manages to reflect one of the dragon's blasts back at it, driving the dark beast into even greater rage. Logan and Sophia stare in shock, having never seen reflection magic before. Even the greatest mages in the world cannot perform true magical reflection. This spell is one of Orun's own creation. Even so, the dragon's scales are impossibly tough. Despite taking the full power of the reflected fire, the monster remains standing, completely unharmed. Orun understands that he has run out of safe options. From here on, he must take risks. He activates a multicasting boost, forming 6 magic circles at once and raising his power. Selma watches in awe, knowing that even high-level mages struggle to maintain more than 3 circles, but Orun has formed 6 with ease. She wonders if she should step in, because even with this boost, he may still not be strong enough to defeat the monster alone. Before she can decide, Orun layers another full-body enhancement over the first, then adds yet another. One after another, he stacks his spells, multiplying and doubling his strength 36 times over. The guides can only stare in disbelief. What Orun is doing is supposed to be impossible. Orun's body begins to glow as raw power surges through his form. The dragon does not understand the change and lashes out with a violent sweep of its tail, but Orun vanishes from its path and reappears on a nearby ledge so fast that it feels as if he is teleported. Selma is startled to witness his true potential. Orun has gone beyond the limits of any support mage in history and is reshaping everything people believe about magic. He drops back down to the ground, chaining one original spell after another. Blood begins to run from his nose. He knows he has pushed his strength beyond human limits and cannot withstand the strain. Plus, his mana is draining at a terrifying speed because he is maintaining dozens of spells at once, a burden no caster can sustain for long. Orun understands that he has only one chance to win. He must end this fight as quickly as possible. He rushes the dragon, slipping past its attacks, then leaps into the air to strike from above. The dragon senses the threat and swings its tail upward to smash him out of the sky, but Orun forms a solid platform of mana beneath his feet and lands on it, causing the dragon's strike to miss. Logan watches in stunned disbelief. Orun explains that he can gather all the surrounding magic into one place and transform it into metal, which is how he created the platform. He compares his ability to Oliver's divine flash, which also gathers large amounts of magic into a single point. Orun rushes at the dragon once more, and this time he lands a devastating blow to the dragon's neck, slicing through its thick armor and cutting into the flesh beneath the scale. The dragon crashes to the ground with a heavy thud. Logan and Sophia celebrate, believing the dark beast has finally fallen. Selma knows better. The dragon is only wounded, not defeated. Orun has reached his limit. He stumbles, struggling to keep his balance, forcing himself forward to continue the attack and deny the dragon any chance to recover. Selma wants to rush in and help him, but she knows the truth. Even the strongest members of their clan together could not land a single strike on the dragon. She wonders what she could possibly do. The dragon rises again and releases a blast of fire to force distance between itself and Orun. Dark magic gathers around its body, forming a storm of shadowed energy before it unleashes a barrage of magical spears. Orun relies on his speed to avoid most of them. While he keeps dodging, he recalls the time from his past, when he used to run through the streets with Oliver, unaware of danger. Then bandits attacked their village and burned everything they loved. They were helpless, able to do nothing but cry as their world fell apart. The next morning, they buried everyone they could find. From that day on, they vowed to grow stronger, to reach a point where they could protect what they cared about so that nothing could ever be taken from them again. Drawing strength from those memories, Orun steps out of the dust and walks straight toward the dragon, refusing to yield in the face of certain death. The dragon begins charging its strongest attack, the very power that has ended countless adventurers and earned its name as living death. The magical spears tear through the air toward Orun. He weaves between them, each strike missing him by mere inches. He then launches a fireball to distract the dragon before leaping in to sever its head. But the strike fails as the dragon's scales harden into an unbreakable shield. Orun recoils and retreats, dodging what spears he can before raising a wall of magic in front of himself to shield against the remaining barrage. The dragon changes its pattern and curves one of the spears to strike from behind, but Orun reacts with near godlike reflexes and reflects the spear away. He presses forward, dodging and striking in quick succession, never giving the dragon room to turn its attention toward the rookies. Orun remembers the last time he fought the black dragon. Derek and Luna helped him deal with its purple spear attack, and Oliver ultimately finished the dragon with his divine flash. Realizing he needs to do something similar, Orun sets a trap spell that rains precise attacks down on the dragon, buying himself time to charge magic convergence into his blade. The technique mirrors Oliver's ultimate attack, though Orun's sword darkens as it absorbs the condensed power. He releases the strike with everything he has. The slash tears through the dragon's attack and lands squarely in its chest. For a moment, it seems over, but the dragon rises again and surges forward, forcing Orun to retreat. His enhancements begin to fade, but with the last of his mana, he reinforces himself once more and delivers a powerful blow that sends the dragon crashing from the sky. Even then, the dragon survives and drags itself back to its feet. Orun gasps for air, realizing that both of them are nearing their limits. His sword fractures and shatters into fragments in his hands. Realizing this ends now, one way or another, he makes his choice and forms a dark void before him, drawing in every trace of energy around them and shaping it into a tightly focused blade of pure power. He grips it with both hands and steps forward. The dragon unleashes another storm of magical spears. Orun uses what little strength remains to slip through the barrage, weaving between attacks while blocking and reflecting just enough to disrupt the dragon's aim. With a final push, he launches himself forward, using a reflected blast to propel his body through the air. He strikes the energy blade down on the dragon's head, and the impact triggers a massive explosion, swallowing the battlefield in dust and shockwaves. When the dust finally settles, Selma finds Orun still alive. He leans against the fading remnants of the blade, breathing heavily, unaware that he has just made history by becoming the first person to defeat the Black Dragon alone.
Luna and the hero party rush toward the dungeon, but just before reaching the entrance, they witness a powerful teleportation spell. Moments later, they realize the Black Dragon has been moved outside the dungeon, and when they arrive, they are shocked to find that it has already been defeated. The creature had killed countless adventurers, and since the party had always believed itself to be the strongest, they struggled to accept what they were seeing. Luna observes the surroundings and notices that several people have also been teleported nearby, including Orun and the rookies he had been training. While the rookies appear completely unharmed, Orun is badly injured, clearly having endured a life-or-death battle. From this, Luna understands that Orun must have fought and defeated the Black Dragon alone. She rushes to heal him, but Orun refuses her help, making it clear that he no longer wants anything from the party that once betrayed him. Instead, he calmly tells her to handle what remains of the dragon and begins to leave. Derek tries to stop him and questions how a weak link like him could defeat such a monster, but Luna intervenes, telling him he has already insulted Orun enough. Unable to accept the situation, Derek lashes out and attacks Luna, but she quickly subdues him with a single spell. Their leader, Oliver, then steps in to calm things down. Later that night, Sophia attempts to write a report about the 3 days she spent learning from Orun, but finds herself unable to focus, as her thoughts keep returning to him and everything he taught her, from overcoming fear to mastering advanced magic. At the same time, her older sister Selma enters the room, clearly exhausted from the day's events, and the two decide to relax together in a bath. They talk, and Selma admits that witnessing Orun's power left her feeling inadequate, as his abilities were far beyond her understanding. Sophia, however, explained that she was able to follow the basics of what he was doing, which makes Selma realize that Sophia has exceptional talent. Sophia then gently hugs her and tells Selma that she is still the person she respects the most, and hearing those words comforts Selma more than anything else. The next morning, Orun wakes up in severe pain from the previous battle. To endure it, he repeatedly uses small pain relief enchantments on himself. Even so, he has to force himself to get up and continue his day. Selma meets him early, and they have breakfast together. During the meal, she informs him that her superiors want to meet him. Since Orun has no immediate plans after the expedition, he agrees to go with her. They meet Vince Briars, the leader of the Night Sky Silver Rabbits, who quickly offers Orun a position in his clan. Not only would he join, but he would also become a lieutenant in their strongest party. Although this is an opportunity most adventurers would accept without hesitation, Orun feels unsure, as his past betrayal makes him reluctant to trust another group so easily. Before they part, Vince also tells him that the Adventurers Guild wants to speak with him. Afterward, Orun visits the old man's shop to receive some guidance. He explains his situation and admits that he is afraid of being used and abandoned again. The old man tells him that fear is natural, but constantly thinking about being used will only cloud his judgment. He explains that betrayal and heartbreak are painful, but they are also part of growing stronger, and that if Orun lets fear control him, he will never move forward. Hearing this helps Orun regain some clarity. Later, Orun goes to the Adventurers Guild, where members of the High Council and the Hero Party are waiting. The guild leader brings up reports claiming that Orun defeated the Black Dragon alone. The Hero Party immediately objects, arguing that they had already weakened the dragon and that Orun merely finished it off. Orun ignores their claim and instead criticizes the decision of Oliver to bring a newly recruited enchanter to floor 92, where the Black Dragon resides. Oliver defends himself, saying they had a stronger enchanter and that the role is simply to stay behind and provide support. Orun firmly disagrees, explaining that an enchanter must constantly manage buffs and analyze the entire battle, making it an extremely demanding role. Although Oliver realizes this is true, he cannot admit it in front of the council. Meanwhile, Logan, Sophia, and Caroline find Selma and ask where Orun lives. They want to convince him to join the Night Sky Silver Rabbits, because they learned so much from him during the expedition. Selma refuses to reveal his address, but tells them he is currently at the Adventurers Guild. The three rookies rush off excitedly. Just when Orun leaves the guild, he sees them running toward him and immediately runs the other way. After losing them, he ends up back at the old man's shop. The old man asks why he is avoiding them, even though they clearly admire him as their mentor. Orun explains that he does not want to join any party right now, and he knows they will try to convince him to join their clan. The old man suggests that Orun may be afraid, but deep down, he is searching for a place where he truly belongs. Later that night, Sophia meets Orun beneath the moonlight. She first speaks of the moon's beauty before finally asking him to join their clan. Instead of answering directly, Orun asks her what the night sky silver rabbits mean to her. Sophia replies that the clan is the reason she can smile every day. It is more than an organization, it is a place where she belongs. Her answer resonates deeply with Orun, and for the first time, he begins to see a clan not as another guild that might betray him, but as a possible home. The next day, Orun goes to the Night Sky Silver Rabbits headquarters and announces that he has decided to join them. Immediately, Selma brings him his new uniform, and with renewed determination, Orun prepares to begin a new journey alongside companions he hopes will stand by his side no matter what.